Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. Our special guest today is Don Lombardi, founder and president of DW Drums. Don sits down with our own Nick DiVirgilio to discuss the history of the company, his own roots as a drum teacher, their innovation with drum pedals, their custom drum building, and lots more. Check this out.
How you doing, everybody? Nick DiVirgilio here, and my very special guest in studio today is founder and president of DW Drums, Mr. Don Lombardi.
Thank you so much.
Nice to have you here. Welcome to Sweetwater. Yeah, your partner, John Good, has been to Sweetwater a few times now. It's your first time here. What do you think of our place?
Oh, it's unbelievable. You know, I have to fanboy out for a minute
Right.
because people will tour DW, and sometimes we get fairly large tours. I'll usually meet the people there, and it's a compliment because they'll say how unbelievable it is and how different it is and everything. But you're working there, so you don't, you take it kind of in stride. But I got to tell everybody that's here, what you guys are doing is coming in from the outside and seeing it. It's not only amazing what you're doing for where the world is right now in terms of the way you're able to educate people and sell the product, but just the way you're helping to motivate and inspire people by coming in to get the chocolate chip cookies, and then all of a sudden they might be taking a drum lesson. It's great.
All good
it's
stuff.
Great. No, congratulations.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks to Chuck for building this place for all of us to
Absolutely.
work at. It's a good thing for sure.
Absolutely.
You've been in business for 45 years now, DW has, and you got your start as an educator, a teacher, but you're also a professional drummer. I don't know how many people actually know that you played drums for quite a long time, made your living doing that before you started making products.
20 years, yeah. I started playing professionally when I was 16 and was able to make a really good living, raised a family of 4, bought a nice house in Santa Monica between playing and teaching, because I taught a good portion of those years that I was a player. I run 40, 50 students a week. Fortunately, I had the opportunity to study with some really good teachers when I was 16 to 25 years old. So I had an older teaching clientele when I was teaching, but it allowed me to really not only know the best drummers in LA, but to see what the young drummers were experiencing too, which was a huge asset when we got into manufacturing.
Sure.
Because I kind of knew what everybody wanted.
Now, getting to your first product, which was your trap seat, your adjustable trap seat, what made that become the first product that you guys got into? Why a seat?
It was just, out of need for myself.
Okay.
Studying with great drummers, you had to sit really solid to get a tap dancing thing going, and nobody was making a great tripod seat back in those days. It was rock solid, which is why Buddy Rich and Louis Bellson, Ed Shaughnessy were using the canister thrones, a drum shell basically with a seat top on it. Right. But if you were to buy one as a consumer, they were 24 inches. So I wanted to make one that adjusted. And I made one for myself, and some friends saw it, could you make one for me? And all of a sudden, the drumming community, being a small community as we know, and tight, started getting orders from people all across the US. And that's when John, who was a student of mine at the time, I said to him, I knew he was handy with his hands and had worked on his motorcycle and things while I was giving lessons to other students. I just said, would you make these I'll give you free lessons if you'll make these seats for me, and we can ship them, So we were getting orders for 5 or 6 a month was a lot, if you didn't have any resource at all for marketing anything. So, and it turned the light on in my head. If you fill a need, you have a chance. And when I had the opportunity to get into it in a bigger scale with the bass drum pedals, that convinced me that, hey, if we can make a better pedal, people will come.
Now, from a younger age, too, were you always a tinkerer? Were you like an inventor? Did you kind of try to be creative with things when you were growing up as a kid?
A little bit. I guess I had that, that kind of side to me. I would always in the early days, I'd get my drum set and I'd take a microphone stand and try and hang a cymbal off it to make a boom stand out of it before they actually had boom stands and things. So, and I think drummers in general like to have, are more mechanical maybe, and more on the, there's so many construction workers that are also drummers, It has something to do with being physical, I think.
Now, moving up to a few years after the business started, I think it was 1977, when you bought the tools and molding from Camco. That's what kind of was the birth of the pedals, right?
Right.
How did that relationship come together?
Simple. I was teaching the son of the owner of Camco. He wanted to have his son take drum lessons. He was the owner of a big musical instrument manufacturing company, Beckman Musical Instruments, back in the 70s. And he bought Camco not as a labor of love. He bought it from Custom Electronics, who had bought it from the company that had owned it before them. George Ways was the original founder, sold it to John Rashawn. It actually was the guy who had owned it and where the name came from, Camco, he was a cam company. He made cams for machines. But they, as he bought it and was making it, they just condensed the name from CAM period CO to Camco.
Right.
It's just a made-up name.
Right.
It's a cam company name. But as it was bought by Tom Beckman, who was the owner of Beckman Musical Instruments, he came to me when he was picking up his son one night and said, "Hey, I have the opportunity, just been offered the opportunity to become president of Roland US," which he did for 25, I think, years and retired recently. And I want to sell this little drum company that I've been building up. And Hoshino, Tama, wanted to buy the name only because they wanted to make everything in Japan. And I've got all these tooling, dies, and molds, which made the bass drum pedal, which is the one that I was using at the time.
Okay.
So I have to say, a little bit out of selfishness, I guess, I just called friends up and said, "Hey, he's selling Camco. I could buy it so we can all still have somebody making the pedal that we all like." So kind of was a natural thing to get into. I thought as a hobby at the time.
Sure.
Little did I know that it would, be the right time at the right place and things would work.
That's amazing. It's great how life puts us down those paths.
Yeah,
sometimes.
you're being at the right place at the right time. Got a
bet.
million of those stories.
There you go. So the pedal was the first product you guys
Pedal was the first
came
thing.
up with.
Yeah, we had no money. I borrowed from the credit union and many people as I could the money just to make a down payment
Right.
to buy the tooling to basically make this pedal, which was prior the Camco pedal. It was the Model 5000 Camco pedal
Okay.
in their catalog, which is why I thought if I keep the number the dealers are used to ordering the Model 5000, we'll just say, hey, it's the DW 5000 now. It's not the Camco, but it was close to the identical pedal. But it felt really great. But it needed some immediate improvements to stay up with the time because metal was coming in those days. Guys were playing the bass drum pedal much harder. So that's where we took this and immediately made some upgrades to it.
Sure.
The first obvious one being we went away from a leather or a nylon strap and put a chain and sprocket on it.
Okay.
So you had no problem with that breaking anymore. And it's been an evolution over years as we use, maybe quickly we can look at a couple of these pedals of changes that we made where we would improve one thing and then that would just lead to, well, if that works, then can you do this? If this works, you can do this. As drummers were progressing in terms of their bass drum technique.
Right.
I mean, we think about what guys were doing back in the 60s and 70s. There was a few drummers known for having fast feet.
Right.
Now, these kids are coming up
they're
out of
crazy
nowhere. It's like, so the idea at the end of the day is to make something, especially for a bass drum pedal, that's transparent. It has to disappear, as you know, as a drummer. You don't want to feel like you're working something to hear what you want to hear out of what you're playing. You just want to do it and have it automatically bring that sound back to you. And the pedal is the one mechanical device we have. We have two cymbals that go up and down, the hi-hats, and we have a couple of pieces of wood. So this is the mechanical device that allows you to really create the music you're playing. And the next thing we did to it, that from a strength standpoint, was we put a plate on it. And this is basically, the evolution of that pedal. It's the DW 5000 as we make it today that has a multitude of improvements on it from
Sure.
that over a period of time. And the having a plate, having the chain were two big ones because now it would hold up. So, but how do we increase the feel of it? We put hinges in the hinge area of the pedal, which is, of course is one of the most movable parts of a pedal because the footboard's going up and down all the time. I have a patent on ball bearings in the hinge area, which is it's the only pedal as of today that has a ball bearing hinge, which is why it feels so good and floats so nicely. We also took any area that moved where the spring hooks up to the beater. We put ball bearings in there. A little bit later, we even took a look at how much the spring stretches, and it would stretch a little bit less if you had a ball bearing in the rocker assembly where the spring attaches to the post. So you get an evener tension going towards the head and going back from the head. So we put ball bearings in there, plus using precision bearings in the actual, in the two posts of the pedal. But whatever you do, as the hex shaft turns while the beater ball rotates, you're putting a little bit of stress on these ball bearings because they're at opposite ends of a shaft that's rotating on them. I'm just bringing that up because that's important, when we get a little bit further down the line to pedals we came up, with at a little later date.
Sure.
And the other big thing was if you look at the two ways these pedals are set up, this pedal felt really good because of the cam design, the way this is an eccentric design. It's not round.
Right.
It's in technical terms a cam. This is round. It's a literal sprocket that we now cast, but the first ones we literally went to the hardware store and bought a sprocket to make them. And being round, completely round or concentric, the shaft is moving at the exact same speed as the beater ball, because you're pulling the shaft up as if it was going over a round pulley, you know, up to the ceiling, if you will. So it's pulling it straight up. There's another way that you can get the footboard to go forward. And that's just by moving the chain forward. In other words, the shaft is not moving at all. If I move the chain forward, the footboard comes up. Right. So if while the shaft is turning, like on the strap pedal, it also pushes it forward, then the beater ball is coming up at a little faster relationship, as is the footboard, to the relationship of the beater. Footboard's moving up faster a little bit than the beater's rotating. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So you get more sensitivity up close to the drum. So I wanted to take, you know, the round sprocket and kind of make a pedal that was roadworthy, that actually had the ability of it to be offset at the same time. And this is our 3000 version, which also has a round sprocket. Right. But the 9000 and the 5000 accelerator pedal allows you to have the offset cam the same as we do on the original chain.
Sure.
So, and the accelerator does it. The accelerator pedal is the exact same as this, as the 5000. It just has the eccentric cam. Right. If you have this pedal, you can adjust it whether it's out or in. So it can be concentric or eccentric. Right. So you kind of take the best of whatever your options would be on the other two pedals, and you have it in one pedal. And then kind of going through the upgrade features to this really quickly with you. Sure. It's a long-winded answer to your question.
That's okay. That's all right.
I'll teach you to ask me a question about our pedals. The other thing we did is, if you take and you set up a pedal on a bass drum, and you don't set it up just right with the bass drum on the floor, you'll have a pivot point where this plate will rock a little bit back and forth. So wanted to solve that problem, because the pedal feels really good when it's solid, you know, right on the floor. Yep. So we made this tri-pivot toe clamp. So it doesn't make any difference how high up your bass drum sits. If you want to keep it an inch or two off the ground, the front, the plate is independent of that and will always sit really solidly on the floor. So the big upgrade here is you can infinitely adjust the cam, and you have it sitting flat on the floor. But the real creme de la creme difference is we took away the drag that are on the ball bearings that are in the shaft by having an independent shaft. So I'm rotating the shaft back and forth with my finger, and the beater ball isn't turning at all. Right. So what you're doing is you're eliminating all the stress that you might have between the pedal and the beater. So it floats lighter than any other pedal on the market. The 5000 is Vinny Caliuta's favorite, because he grew up with it. He wants to feel a little bit more of the weight of the footboard on the ball of his foot. Sure. Steve Smith loves the 9000. It's an old pair of slippers to him. It's just, and he plays more heel up, sliding back and forth. So as you know, being a drummer, and something that I teach a lot of students is, as young drummers develop bass drum speed, it's not how fast they make the pedal work, it's how quick they can get out of the way, because the beater ball is going to bounce back faster than the spring brings the pedal back. Right. If, I don't know what this is, but if I let go of it now, it's coming back at 20 miles an hour, say. Right. If it hits the drum and I get out of the way of it, it'll come back at 30 miles an hour, because it's rebounding off something. So the way great bass drum technicians get the pedal to work so fast is by getting out of the way of it. And that's why this pedal feels so good, because the second time it comes up, it almost goes all the way to the head again. So you only have to move it another inch in order to play that next beat. So it's constantly a matter of dancing with it and getting it into and out of the bass drum head. I'll let you ask another question before we get to the 9000 here.
Well, going back in the history of the company a little bit, the 5000 pedal was really kind of what...
First one.
Well, took the company kind of up and over, right?
Yes.
It made you enough money to expand the company, to go into other things?
The 5000 was, our first entree into a single bass drum pedal that really, you know, stood the test of time and worked, but still felt as good as the original pedal. That was kind of my goal. The thing that took the company over the top was the double pedal. because I was competing with a lot of companies. This pedal was $109. The competition pedal was $69. So I was still competing against lower price point pedals to consumers or young drummers who didn't know the difference between a pedal that was okay and a pedal that was really fast.
Right.
And their playing was at a point where both probably worked for them. So we were very popular with drummers with top pros. I mean, they all played the DW pedal, as many do today, regardless what drums they might endorse.
Right.
But as you start learning the curve of being in business and overhead and expenses and growing, it wasn't until we introduced the double pedal when we were the first company that had a functional double pedal, a double pedal that really worked, with universals and with the plates under both sides, had a really good patent on that.
Right.
So we then came out with the new mousetrap, if you will, and that was the only, for 2 years, nobody else had a double pedal that really worked. So that was kind of put us on the map. I mean, I've often said, we made our very first pedals, and probably the second or third pedal we made, Hank Belson picked up for Louis Belson, who is a phenomenal drummer, historical drummer back in the day, and one of my idols. And I had known him as a player just to say hello before, but we never really ever hung out. And I get a call, 2 days later, and it's Louis Belson on the phone. I said, Louis, this is great. He said, yeah, I got to tell you, this is the best pedal I've ever played in my life. I absolutely love it. Could I buy another one? I said, look, I'll give you another one. Don't even think about it. So at that moment, this is like I'm in business making pedals for maybe 2 or 3 months. I knew I was a success. It was several years after that our accountant thought we were a success.
Okay.
Total different way you would value success.
Sure.
But when we got the double pedal, then the company became a little bit successful because we were able to sell something nobody else had.
That's a great story. Now, before we get to the other pedals here, like the machine drive.
Yeah, that's the last one, the newest.
DW has always been a very innovative company. So during this time, too, with since you bought the molds from Camco, you got into making drums as well, and that's where John Good kind of took off and made a name for himself as well. So how much time was spent between each thing?
Well, going back to the very beginning, John was a student of mine.
Right.
And then when I was making the seats, I got him involved in making the seats. When we bought Camco, the thing we were in the business of making was the pedals at the beginning. Right. A little bit got into the cymbal stands and that. And we had some of the tooling. We had the lug. We had tooling for hoops to make drums. But it was more of a hobby. We would make a drum set every couple of months. Okay. Maybe if we were really into it, we'd make a drum set a month. But it wasn't anything we were selling through retail chains at all. We were selling mostly to friends. But in the late 80s, after a period of 7 or 8 years, you had dribbled and drabbed quite a few drum sets out there where we had a few friends of mine who were dealers who started carrying the drums. Didn't do any marketing or anything. It was strictly totally word of mouth. But we were, starting to pick up a lot of speed, with pedals, and had our hi-hat at that time. So the actual first trade show we took drums to was in 1990. Okay. And that was an interesting experience. But during the time, and I'll tell you about that, but during the time that John was working with me in the 80s, because we were getting to meet a lot of the best drummers in the world who were using the pedals, he had the opportunity to become a drum tech. Right. And which was a great experience for both of us because one, he could make a lot more money than I could afford to pay him at DW, and two, he was out there on the road testing everything in real life, sure. Every day. So and he did major tours with several of the Michael Jackson tours with Jonathan Moffett, Madonna's tours, again with John Chad, with Zappa. Some great stories Zappa has about John Good and John has about Zappa but that's 45 years here, folks. There's a lot of stories out there, but I'm only getting a few here. So so we had an opportunity to test a lot of our products on the road while John was out there. At the point at which 88, 89, when I started getting calls from some dealers, I thought, let's give this drum thing a chance. And Modern Drummer back in those days, they did an industry poll. I think they did it 3 times. They have the consumer poll about the artists all the time now, and there's more genres than I even know exist that people went in today. But they did the industry one for manufacturers, which was, I think, most innovative product, best quality, most innovative company, and customer service, and maybe the other one was best marketing. But first year they did it, we won 4 out of the 5 categories.
Huh.
We didn't, and here I am in a 1,500 square foot unit with 11 employees, and going against, if you want to look at it that way, though I've never thought of us having competitors. We kind of do what we do, and we just do the best we can at it.
Right.
But there was major companies that were out there, and so they did 2 years again, and we won 4 out of 5 again. So I get a call from Ross Magnardi, the editor of Drum, or owner of Drum Magazine back in those days. He said, yeah, some of the companies are really pissed thinking that we're really favoring you, but it's a survey. I just add up the votes in the survey, so we're not going to do this industry thing anymore, because they advertise 10 times more than you do in Modern Drummer, and
Right.
and you're getting kind of all the press for it. But it gave me the nerve to take the quantum leap from being a bass drum pedal company, where we're making a $160 product,
Right.
to a drum company where we're making a $3,000 product. That's almost like apples and oranges. So we're back to not making any money again, because you're putting all your money into trying to develop something, a whole new product line. And it was the 1990 NAMM show we went to, and Chris, my son, who is now the CEO running the company, was doing sales at that point. And John, I'd pulled back in off the road a couple years before that, said, no more traveling, we got a shot at this, let's dig in and see if we can make it as a drum company, and take it to the next level.
Sure.
But we went to that show, and I got together with everybody ahead of time, and let's have our 15 best pedal dealers buy one drum set, and ta-da, it'll be a hit. And then we'll feel it. We're $3,000. The high-end Pearl kit, custom recording kit in those days was $2,000. We were a lot more money. We're making it in California. We were putting everything we could into it. And at the end of the first day of the show, Chris pulls me aside, and I get my dry humor kind of back at me again. He says, Dad, we got a big problem. So I said, let's pull John over. He said, got to get John over. We got to talk to both you guys. So I'm willing to pump him up. If we could sell 5 kits at the show, that would be okay, because eventually we'll see what happens. But he said no. I said, that's not the problem. The problem is we sold 60 drum sets. We didn't have any place to make them. We could make 2
Right.
drum sets a month. We were opening the back door where we were spraying, hoping this, the lacquer wouldn't blow out the next guy. Nothing was legal.
Right.
So very long story, the end of it. I'm not going to say it's short because I drew it out here, but basically it took us a 1.5 years to fill those orders. At that point, John kind of took over, working on the drums. I kind of focused more on the hardware.
Right.
Behind the scenes, we both come up with ideas and
Together.
do together anything we want. But it's kind of a full-time job for him to source out all the woods and everything we want to do there, and for me to keep going with the hardware, which is how I, the last major new product we came out with was the machine drive pedal.
Sure.
Just a couple of years ago.
Well, it's a great marriage between the two of you.
Yeah.
'Cause, obviously, the drum products are amazing, fantastic, tons of innovations there, and the hardware as well. So let's jump to this pedal here.
This is kind of the next version of the 9000, if you will. I wanted to keep the same feature of having obviously the floating rotor. We call it the independent shaft.
Right.
So it's just as fast as the 9000, a little bit lighter weight because the footboard's a little bit lighter weight. Still the ball bearing hinge. But would it be possible for you to be sitting at your drum set and adjust the spring tension on a pedal? And this is the only one that allows you to do that, because with the drum key right here, you can be playing and sit down and adjusting it, as opposed to taking it off a little lighter, taking it off a little. And then the other thing was this cam adjustment I was talking about between eccentric and concentric. You can do it on the fly from a sitting position. You can roll this out, and you can see how it's going out to be like an eccentric cam, like the old
Yep.
nylon strap, or you can bring it back so it's completely round, like the original chain drive. And again, I thought it was going to be a little bit more of a set and forget, but I've had players who have said, at the beginning of the night, I keep it out because we're playing kind of softer, and I'm, not playing as hard. And as the night goes on, I switch it down here because we're playing more funk stuff, with my whole foot. Or Latin guys that are playing sambas where it's, you're playing doubles fast. It feels much better if it's in the full accelerator. Maybe for other tunes, you want to notch it back. So I didn't envision that it would be used like that by guys, but it's kind of like you're in your sports car and you can dial in the shift gear of it a little bit, and it has the other features of the 9000. The unique one about this is we took the the tri-pivot toe clamp one step further, where this whole part actually rotates back and forth, which allows you on a single pedal to set it up. If you're setting it up quick and it's offset like a ½ inch, it's a pain now because you got to put it down on the floor. This is rocking, so you got to lift it up, adjust it over again, get it so it's right at the bottom of the hoop, of the bass drum hoop. This one could be a little bit off and it's still going to set really tight, but that's not the main reason we did that. Main reason we did it is on double pedals, the main beater is going to hit on the center, the auxiliary beater is going to hit off center. So you're getting two different sounds by hitting two different parts of the drum head. On the double pedal version of this, you can actually tighten it up on the hoop just as it starts to come up. You can move it over 1 inch because this will rotate to the angle of the hoop and have the two beaters hit exactly off center. It's the only pedal that acoustically, lets you do that.
Sure. Well, I can tell you from experience, I have the double pedal in my office and I use it all the time, and it's as smooth as silk. It's a great feeling kick drum pedal.
That's great.
I think, and the foot plate to me feels really good underneath my shoe. The material is it's really nice.
Yeah, and it's super lightweight, and I've had several guys, which is inspiring to me, come to me. Danny Seraphine's one, a great drummer the other day, who just said he actually tried it and he says, I haven't been able to play this on my existing pedal. I mean, he's practiced it, he used to be able to play it, but people get used to adapting to something like we all do when they get something that allows them to do something else. But for a guy to say, hey, I can play things I couldn't do before, that's the whole idea of why we're in business, solve problems and try and give the artists something that they can use to produce their craft.
Sure. And now you guys are working close with LP,
yes,
Latin Percussion, and you're using this technology of innovation in pedals to bring it to the world of Latin percussion with your cajon pedals and different things like that.
Yeah, I think it's just the entrepreneurial spirit, Drum manufacturing, the drumming community is a close-knit group, I think, more than other, groups of other guitar players or bass players or saxophone players. And the Latin percussion industry is, part of the drum industry. Sure. And I think you've got to look at not what you produce as products. You have to look at them as musical inventions that will allow somebody to do whatever they want to do. So LP in recent years has been in the hands of very large corporations, Fender, Kaman, and I think when you get a situation like that, you lose a bit of the entrepreneurial spirit of the connection between what are we selling and what does it do. You can look at what you're selling and you can see how it works, but the whole key is not telling you that this has an adjustment and here's what the pedal does, but the key to educating the consumer on why he wants to buy this is what it does for him. Right. Oh, I've never heard of a drummer call somebody up and say, hey, check out the new machine drive pedal. It really the adjustment on the spring and the cam goes out and the spring you adjust from the side. It says, hey, it feels great. It's the way I got it adjusted, the way it feels. It's what it does. So for Latin percussion instruments, cowbells, the cajones, to make them a musical instrument that'll make it easier for you to play. The cajon pedal. Why would we make a cajon pedal when everybody's got a cajon pedal? Well, we wouldn't and we didn't until we made one that feels as good as a bass drum pedal and is totally unique. Right. And that's the same with, there's got to be a story behind everything you make, I think. And for us to get into Latin percussion, I think drum sets are becoming more hybrid. There's no doubt in my mind the average drum set 3 or 4 or even sooner than that from now is going to include percussion instruments. You'll buy a 5-piece kit, you're going to be buying it with a cowbell pedal, you'll be buying it with maybe some timbales off to the side or a conga. And so I've always wanted to get into Latin percussion. We got into it for a few years back in 2007, 2008 when I developed the whole Gunbops product line after owning that name for a period of years. And then when we sold that to Sabian, the intention was to get back into it again, but you get busy as time goes by. So it was definitely in our upcoming bucket list. And when Chris, my son, who's the CEO, was a godsend to me because he loves the business side of doing what we're doing and dealing with all of the things that, and he has input on products too, but I kind of have my office in the back. I'm more the geek, guy that has all kinds of prototypes. You'll see when you have a chance to come out, or you guys come out and visit sometime, visit us too.
Sure.
We're in Oxnard, California. You'll get a sense of all the new things that we have that we're coming out with all the time. But with him dealing on the business more and me dealing more on the product side, it's been a perfect marriage and combination. And that's why I spent the first year just working on cajones, because they needed a whole new cajon line. And now we're moving on throughout the whole product line and working with the best artists in the world, which is fun.
So Don, before we close off this video, let's talk about one more thing. We talked about how in the past you were an educator, lots of students. You spent many years of your life teaching. Fast forward to today, you have a website called the Drum Channel. You've had it for quite some time now, but you're retooling that a little bit as well. So why don't you tell us what's going on with your Drum Channel?
Oh, very, very exciting things. I'm finding myself spending a disproportionate amount of time on it at this particular moment, because we're about to launch a new site that I've been development with for over 2 years now. I always taught, when I was a professional drummer, and I love teaching. I have a passion for that, as probably as much as I did playing at the time. And I kind of wanted to get back into it, but as the company was growing, you're working 70 hours a week, and you're doing what you're doing to pursue your dream as far as manufacturing. But my kids were always saying, and I'd rag on, I can't get back to, I'd love to be teaching again. They're like, well, when are you going to do it, Dad? When you're like 140, or like, why don't you do it now and start a website, And so I thought this would be really cool. It is the way to do it. So started building the original Drum Channel back in 2006, 2007, 2008. Long story in 10 seconds. Basically, the developers that were trying to do it didn't know what they were doing. And back in those days, building a website was completely different than it is now. As technology's probably changed between the time I said that and now. Yeah, right.
It's so fast.
It's so fast. So up to the moment, basically, we put the website up, not in the format I had dreamt it would always be, but in a way in which we were able to get phenomenal lessons out to end users. But I wanted to have it be more interactive. So the new website is pretty much the way I always envisioned it would be. It's the Drum Channel website, but really Drum Channel is the vehicle for the artists to have their own website.
Okay.
So artists can come on, produce their content. Some of it is subscription-based, where you can pay a small fee and see individual lessons from them, or you can buy courses from them, or you can get what we call artist tracks, which is actually the educator, the teacher coming on and having his whole website within the format of Drum Channel. So and I'm partnered with two of the leading firms in monetizing digital online content.
Okay.
And it allows us to use a unique player that we have built, that I've updated. So as you're watching a video, you can pick whether you want to watch the overhead camera, the foot camera, the side camera on the drummer,
cool.
Or the edited line cut.
Right.
It's fun when you watch a band. You can decide just to watch the drummer, or you can watch the line cut of the rest of the band. So it's a great educational tool. It's also a fun thing, because we do a lot of live shows. So the basic iteration of the site that we'll be relaunching is, of course, education, because that's kind of why I did it in the first place. But all the artists were coming on and saying, hey, I want to play with bands. Well, this is a great format. We have a great audio video studio we built. So there's a real entertainment component to it also.
Sure.
We have over 800 lessons right now on the site. We have over 250 shows that we've shot, and when we relaunch, we'll be producing new ones, all the time. So, to me, it's not just giving back. You get with these artists, with Chad Smith, with Neil Peart, guys who aren't looking to give drum lessons or sell their lessons online.
Right.
They just want to give back. But when I grew up, you too. If we were going to hang out with the best drummers in the world, you'd have to hopefully catch them at a club and go backstage. And I remember 15 minutes talking to Elvin when Shelly Mann introduced me to him, and it was like, wow, that was like a dream come true, and to get to meet him and talk a little bit about what he's doing and playing and things. And now if I can interview these people and bring it to the public. Of the lessons we have on are, drum, sitting behind the drum set, try this, try that.
Right.
But I got to tell you, some of the most educational content we have on is in the entertainment shows.
Sure.
Where you're sitting there and you're in a round table with Keltner and Charlie Watts and Zigaboo and James Gatson, and I turn to them and say, so how would you define funk? and these are you get the answer they come up with. Or, Charlie, why do you raise your right hand, to get it out of the way of your left hand? And the answers they come up with is just like, they can be life-changing in the career of somebody.
Sure.
So I'm excited about that. So education is important. It's a separate company completely from anything else. You don't have to be a DW artist to be on Drum Channel. I don't care what you play. It's all about education and helping to motivate and inspire, people out there to play music.
And that's the last thing you said just there is very similar to what Chuck Sirac does here at Sweetwater, getting gear to people to have so they can live their dreams and play music and get some real enjoyment out of it.
And again, he does a great job at that. You might check out the kitchen because they got the best chocolate chip cookies I've ever had. So he's very, very brilliant because you might come here for the chocolate chip cookies, but you're going to walk by the drum teaching studio and drink the water and get you into playing drums very soon. But everything you're doing here, from the recording aspect of it, you've got every aspect of the industry really covered, and the store, Premier. So it's such an important part of us to be in partnership with you. It's you're the one. I'll come up with the ideas and work with the artists, but you have to educate people on what we're doing, and that's why I love it.
Well, thanks so much for coming to Sweetwater. It's a great sales meeting today, showing us your products, and I wish you all the best for all of your future endeavors.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Great to see you.
Thank you.
My thanks to Nick DiVirgilio for sitting down with Don Lombardi for this discussion of DW Drums, really a fascinating company that makes incredible instruments. And thank you for joining me for the Sweetwater Minute. I'm Mitch Gallagher.